Welcome. Have you ever wondered about the power of silence? In our fast-paced world, where voices compete for attention, silence is often overlooked. But in Islam, silence is held in high regard, seen as a form of wisdom, patience, and self-discipline. Today, we'll explore the beauty and significance of silence in Islam. And as we go through these teachings, take a moment to pause, to reflect what role does silence play in your life. Let's begin with the core concept. Silence in Islam is more than just the absence of words. It's an active choice, one of mindfulness and self-restraint. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. This hadith encourages Muslims to reflect before speaking and to ensure their words serve a positive purpose. If one cannot say something good, silence is preferred. This hadith encourages Muslims to reflect before speaking, asking themselves whether their words will bring benefit or harm. Speak only for positive purposes, to uplift, educate, support, or spread good, truthful words. Choose silence if words aren't beneficial, rather than speaking out of obligation, habit, or impulse. A Muslim chooses silence if they don't have anything beneficial to say. The concept of silence in Islam is deeply rooted in the principles of mindfulness, self-control, and ethical speech. In Islamic teachings, silence is more than just the absence of words. It is a powerful spiritual practice that helps individuals avoid unnecessary speech that could harm themselves or others. By speaking only when words are kind, constructive, and beneficial, a Muslim aligns with the moral guidelines of Islam and embodies the character modeled by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Silence is closely linked with the idea of mindfulness, or taqwa, consciousness of God. By controlling one's speech, a person becomes more aware of their thoughts and intentions before they express them. This mindfulness allows them to consider whether their words are pleasing to Allah and beneficial to others. Practicing silence, therefore, helps Muslims develop a habit of self-awareness and intentionality, leading to a more thoughtful and conscious life. The Quran and Hadith encourage self-restraint, particularly in managing emotions that might lead to harmful speech, like anger or jealousy. Words spoken in the heat of the moment often lead to regret and even division among people. In this regard, silence becomes a form of self-discipline that shields a person from the dangers of careless or hurtful speech. Islam teaches that guarding the tongue is one of the most challenging, yet rewarding acts of worship because it requires constant vigilance over what one says. Have you ever been in a situation where remaining silent felt more powerful than any words you could say? Think about it. Silence can shield our soul from sins like gossip, argumentation, and backbiting. It's about speaking only when necessary and beneficial. Silence as mindfulness and self-restraint. Islam teaches that silence is linked with taqwa, or consciousness of Allah. By controlling our speech, we become mindful of our intentions, asking ourselves, are my words pleasing to Allah? This practice of self-awareness leads to a more conscious and thoughtful life. How often do we speak without thought, only to wish we could take those words back? The Prophet, peace be upon him, reminded us, a true Muslim is the one who avoids harming others with his tongue and hands. Sahih al-Bukhari. This hadith emphasizes that true faith includes the ethical use of words and actions. By choosing silence in moments of anger, gossip, or conflict, a Muslim exemplifies strength and patience. In Islam, silence is closely linked with the idea of mindfulness, or taqwa. By controlling one's speech, a person becomes more aware of their thoughts and intentions before they express them. This mindfulness allows them to consider whether their words are pleasing to Allah and beneficial to others. Practicing silence, therefore, helps Muslims develop a habit of self-awareness and intentionality, leading to a more thoughtful and conscious life. The Quran and Hadith encourage self-restraint, particularly in managing emotions that might lead to harmful speech, like anger or jealousy. Words spoken in the heat of the moment often lead to regret and even division among people. In this regard, silence becomes a form of self-discipline that shields a person from the dangers of careless or hurtful speech. Islam teaches that guarding the tongue is one of the most challenging, yet rewarding acts of worship because it requires constant vigilance over what one says. Let's reflect, what would our conversations look like if we practiced silence more? How much of what we say is truly necessary? Silence as ethical speech. The Prophet, peace be upon him, often chose silence over idle talk. He spoke only when his words served a purpose. Imagine the impact if we did the same. Imagine the peace if we chose silence when tempted to argue or criticize. Imagine a family gathering where relatives are discussing a recent achievement of a cousin who recently graduated from a prestigious university. Someone in the conversation starts comparing the cousin's success with another family member who has chosen a different, less conventional career path. One of the cousins feels the urge to join the conversation, to offer their opinion on the comparisons being made. But before speaking, they pause and ask themselves, will my words contribute positively or negatively to this discussion? Will my words uplift, or could they unintentionally hurt or offend someone? By reflecting first, they realize that speaking without consideration might not only worsen the conversation, but also unintentionally create tension in the family. After reflecting, the cousin decides that if they are to speak, their words should be supportive and positive. So instead of joining the comparisons, they redirect the conversation by saying something like, "It's wonderful to see everyone pursuing what they're passionate about. Every career has its own value and path to success." This comment acknowledges everyone's worth without comparing, aiming to uplift both parties and remind the family of the importance of support rather than competition. As the conversation continues, some family members persist with comparisons, implying that one career path is superior. The cousin feels the urge to speak again, but recognizing that further input might fuel the debate, they choose silence. By holding back, they avoid escalating the conversation or getting drawn into a potentially hurtful or pointless argument. This choice to stay silent reflects wisdom and restraint, keeping the focus on peace rather than unproductive comparisons. In this way, the cousin's silence shows respect and helps maintain harmony within the family gathering. Islam teaches us to pause and ask ourselves, will my words bring benefit, or could they bring harm? Reflect on the last time you were in a heated conversation. Could silence have brought more peace than winning the argument? Silence as protection from sin. The Quran warns us, not a word does he utter, but there is a watcher by him ready to record it. Surah Qaf 50-18. This verse reminds us that every word is counted. Every careless remark, every piece of gossip, each is recorded. Islam views harmful speech like gossip or ghaiba, slander, and lies as sinful because they harm both the speaker and the one being spoken about. Silence, therefore, protects the soul from sin by avoiding these speech-related transgressions. This verse reminds Muslims that every word is recorded, reinforcing the importance of silence as a shield against carelessness in speech. In situations where harmful speech arises, like gossip or slander, silence acts as a shield, protecting our soul from regret. Have you been in gatherings where silence felt wiser than speaking? How did that choice make you feel afterward? The beauty of silence in Islam. Silence in Islam holds beauty in its depth, granting us inner peace and wisdom. Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, once said, "Silence is the best reply to a fool." Sometimes, not every criticism or provocation deserves a response. Imagine the following. Sarah works in an office where she is well regarded by her colleagues. However, there's one co-worker, Ahmed, who frequently makes negative and sarcastic comments about her work. Despite Sarah's efforts to ignore him, Ahmed continues with offhand remarks like, "Must be nice to have everything handed to you," or "Some people get credit for doing the bare minimum." Sarah initially feels tempted to defend herself and explain all the hard work she puts into her job. However, before responding, she recalls the saying, "Silence is the best reply to a fool." She realizes that arguing with Ahmed would only fuel his negativity and could even damage the office atmosphere. So instead of reacting, Sarah stays silent and calmly returns to her work. Over time, her silence sends a message. His comments don't affect her or undermine her confidence. Eventually, Ahmed grows bored, as his attempts to provoke her are met with nothing but calm and professionalism. By choosing silence, Sarah preserves her dignity, avoids unnecessary conflict, and doesn't give Ahmed the satisfaction of a reaction. Her silence demonstrates maturity and self-control, showing that not every criticism or provocation deserves a response. This isn't about weakness, it's about understanding that true strength often lies in restraint. So, ask yourself, what do I gain by responding? Could silence perhaps carry a greater message? Islam gives us specific guidance on situations where silence is better than speaking. In moments of anger, for example, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, advised, if any of you becomes angry, let him keep silent. Musnad Ahmad. Anger often leads to words that a person may regret. By staying silent, a person can avoid escalating the situation and later reconcile without the weight of hasty, hurtful words. Anger often clouds judgment, leading people to say things they don't mean or make statements they later regret. Silence during anger allows a person to process their emotions calmly, preventing hurtful language that might strain relationships. By refraining from speaking until the anger subsides, individuals can maintain control over their actions and avoid causing harm. This principle aligns with Islamic teachings on patience or sabr and self-restraint. Imagine a scenario where a person has a disagreement with a family member, perhaps a parent, sibling, or spouse. The disagreement becomes heated, and one or both people start to feel intense anger. In such moments, it's common for people to say hurtful things without thinking, which could lead to lasting harm within the family. By choosing to remain silent, the person follows the Prophet's Muhammad, peace be upon him, advice, taking a step back to avoid further escalation. Instead of reacting immediately, they stay silent until they feel calmer. This silence not only prevents hurtful words, but also signals a willingness to find a peaceful resolution. Later, once the anger has passed, they can approach the family member and discuss the issue with clarity and respect, which often leads to a better outcome and preserves the bond. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, offered practical steps to help manage anger. First, seeking refuge in Allah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, I know a word which, if he were to say it, his anger would leave him. If he said, I seek refuge with Allah from Satan, his anger would leave him. Sahih al-Bukhari. This reminder encouraged Muslims to calm themselves spiritually and seek Allah's help when feeling overwhelmed by anger. Second, changing physical position. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also advised changing posture when angry, saying, if one of you becomes angry while standing, let him sit down. If the anger goes away, fine. If not, let him lie down. Sunan Abi Dawud. Changing position can help redirect the body's energy, reducing the intensity of anger. Third, performing wudu or ablution. Since anger is associated with the heat of emotions, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, recommended cooling down by performing ablution, which can help calm a person physically and mentally. We've all felt anger, but have you noticed how anger can cloud our judgment? How it leads to words we wish we could take back? Islam teaches that silence in such moments allows for clarity, giving us the chance to respond with wisdom rather than impulsive emotion. Silence when unsure of the truth. The Quran warns against spreading unverified information, saying, if there comes to you information, investigate, lest you harm a people out of ignorance and become regretful. Surah Al-Hujr 49-6. This verse underscores that silence is better than passing along potentially harmful or incorrect information. For instance, when a rumor spreads, a Muslim is encouraged to refrain from sharing it without verification. In Islam, there's a strong emphasis on truthfulness and the responsibility to avoid spreading unverified information. The Quran warns against acting on or spreading rumors without first investigating their truth, as unverified information can cause harm and lead to regret. This verse highlights the importance of verifying information before sharing it, teaching Muslims to avoid assumptions and refrain from spreading anything that might not be true. Imagine a scenario where an employee hears a rumor that a co-worker might be leaving the company or that a new manager will be replacing the current one. The person might feel tempted to share this news with others, perhaps out of curiosity or as a conversation starter. However, if this information is unverified, sharing it could create anxiety, misunderstandings, or unnecessary gossip among colleagues. In this case, Islam encouraged the employee to remain silent about the rumor unless they verify it through a reliable source. By choosing silence, the person avoids contributing to office gossip and the potential spread of misinformation. If the rumor turns out to be false, they have protected themselves and others from needless concern. In a world of instant communication, how often do we pause to ask ourselves, is this information true? By choosing silence over spreading rumors, we protect not only our own integrity, but also the peace and trust within our community. Avoiding unnecessary arguments or debates. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, promised, "I guarantee a house in paradise for one who gives up arguing, even if he is in the right." Sunan Abi Dawud. Sometimes, walking away from an argument is a victory in itself. This highlights the importance of choosing peace over proving a point, as silence can often diffuse tension and prevent needless conflict. This teaching highlights that choosing peace over proving oneself can prevent tension and promote harmony. Islam values constructive, respectful conversations, but discourages arguments that lack purpose or only serve to fuel conflict. Here's a closer look at the principle and examples to illustrate it. Arguments often lead to heightened emotions and can escalate quickly, sometimes leading to hurtful statements, resentment, and broken relationships. Silence or withdrawal from unnecessary debate shows emotional maturity, patience, and an understanding that preserving peace is more valuable than winning a point. Islam encourages Muslims to maintain harmony within their communities, families, and social circles, and silence in the face of potential conflict serves as a protective measure against strained relations. Imagine a situation where someone criticizes Islam or challenges its teachings with provocative questions, perhaps not out of genuine curiosity, but rather to provoke or start an argument. A Muslim may feel compelled to defend their faith, but in cases where the other person is not open to a respectful discussion, the debate can quickly become heated and unproductive. In such cases, Islam encourages silence or polite disengagement, recognizing that continuing the argument would likely be futile and could lead to hostility. The Muslim might say something like, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Let's agree to disagree and leave the conversation peacefully." This approach not only prevents unnecessary conflict, but also reflects the patience and wisdom encouraged by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Reflect, how often do we argue just to prove a point, even when it leads nowhere? Imagine the peace that comes from simply letting go. In Islam, silence is not about avoiding truth. It's about intentional speech. It's about using words to uplift, to guide, and to bring peace. Silence is a choice, a powerful one that protects our soul, our relationships, and our peace. So, take a moment now and ask yourself, what place does silence hold in my life? Am I using my words with purpose, or am I letting them carry me away? Let's take this journey together towards mindful silence, purposeful words, and the peace that only comes from choosing restraint.